Yeah, so our first person is going to be Cody. Cody's going to be talking about the live content API. Hi, Cody.
Hey, yes. I'm
So
really
where are
excited about
you?
this one.
Right on, us too. And where are you joining from? And what's your favorite holiday themed beverage?
It's Oslo, and yes, it's the pumpkin spice latte. And no, I don't care if anyone thinks that's a basic bitch thing, because it's just really good.
It's so
Pumpkin
good.
spice frappuccino is also very good. Acceptable choice.
Nice.
It took me so long to learn that it's not pumpkin, it's pumpkin spice. Two different things.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
don't
think.
want to try that.
But yeah, live content API.
Yes.
Uh, what is the live content API?
Well, the TLDR is that it's a way for you to ensure that when you fetch data, it gets revalidated and refreshed whenever it needs to, whenever content is actually pushed. So you don't have to make choices such as, should I let it expire, 30 seconds, every 30 seconds, but then, it's like we're going to keep asking to see if it's there, but what if something needs to go out right away and then it's up too long, right? So it solves all of that in a very elegant way. So you can think more about what content you want to query and how you want to present it and deal with like how people should see that new content, because there are a lot of differences between content that should go out right away, like fixing a typo, but you don't want to mess with people's experience. You don't want to make make a layout shift so people tap the wrong thing, or that stuff moves around. No one likes that. So there's a
Yes.
lot of challenges there, and I was surprised at how much time you actually spend thinking about those things, since we now take care of the hard problem of refreshing the page for you. So now you
Exactly.
have
And
to
like,
deal with that.
and next week it's like Black Friday. Like, maybe someone in the chat is like are building e-commerce. I was like, they have worked on e-commerce stuff for this for weeks or months, even. And it's like this event thing where it's very important that the right things are on the website and the e-commerce front end at the right times. And if you have like a lot of people interested, like that, like good products and stuff that are like out of stock isn't promoted on the banner. So like there's a bunch of these use cases where live content is really handy. And as you said, Cody, we took care of the hard parts, which is like making this like globally accessible, scalable, that like thousands and thousands of people can like have live content at the same time.
Yeah.
And now we're going to talk a little bit about not the infrastructure part of this, but more like the developer experience of implementing this. And as you said, like how do you think about live content? Because that changes the premise of how the front end UX and so on works, right? So
Yes, it
let's dive
does.
into that.
Yes. So the ideal like setup that we really wanted to accomplish was that conceptually you would only need to know how to configure a client, and then it will give you two utilities: a function for fetching data and a function that you render in the route layout or on specific routes where you want the live behavior to kick in, so that you only set this up once and then you fetch data here. And when we first tried this, we went in with the kind of constraints where we had to bust like the cache and queries somehow. And we weren't happy with that approach for Next.js. In frameworks like React Router, or I'm going to show later how it looks like when you use something like TanStack start, then the cache busting with the last live event ID worked really well. So for frameworks where you don't have like a separate cache layer, but you fetch data directly on every request, this model worked fine. But for Next.js, it was very annoying and very limiting because, for example, in Next.js, you can't access a search param on the layout. You can only do that on the page. But in this case, I'm fetching data that renders the theme on the layout. So how can we make that live? And then I had a really nice long shower, and I was thinking about, what if we could just push, like when you fetch data, what if we can just use the revalidate tag API in, let's see, the revalidate tag API, and just set tags from the response, and use the Next.js API called revalidate tag. What if we can just I'm moving a little fast, but the live content API is two parts. There's one which is the listener. I'm going to show it just very briefly, where you listen to events and then you refetch data somehow. And for different frameworks, you handle that differently. So in TanStack start, we change the search parameter, but here we call the server action. And in the server action in Next.js, we call this Next.js API called revalidate tag. And then in the past, you would have to define these tags manually. So the idea was, what if we could just, since we already are given these cache tags, to make sure that you don't revalidate unless it's from a query that is in use. So I'm just going to show what that looks like here. When we fire a change event in the little listener, this is the live content API that tells us about changes. So you will see that when I hit random theme, an event will fire. This is a little buggy today. I used a worker, not very good with workers. Come on. Or we change the title. That one should work. We'll get an event. So it tells us the tags that changed, right? And then for each query we run, and in this app, we run two, one for the theme and one for the text. So they're cached independently. Then with the dev tools in TanStack, we can actually look at what the tag looks like. If I just close this one. So you can see that for the query that renders this title, this is the tag in use there. So the idea was, what if we could just pass those tags into Next.js and let Next.js handle all of it? And it worked really, really well, especially in Next 15. So in Next 15, that's exactly what we're doing. So here we're using server components. And if I change the title, you'll know that it updates right away. And it does that for everyone. So if you were to go to this URL, I'm just going to share that real quick with the chat here so that Capro Canoe can share it with you. It's live, and it's live for everyone. And if anyone can press this random color theme button as well. And sometimes it actually works, and then it changes the theme for everyone. Let's see. Come on, please. Oh, man. Oh, let's see if TanStack can do it. Not to this Next.js. Oh, there we go. All right. And yeah, so it worked really well. But there were some trade-offs we had to take into account. The most important one being that with the caching APIs that are available in Next 15 and 14, you have to specify the tags on the query before you run it. So we have to run the query twice, which is not ideal. So that means you will get 2 API hits. We are working on making it so that this one that we always run to check for tags will not count in your billing because it's an implementation detail. So before we go GA, this query will not count, even though it will run twice. So if anything is changed in the query and there's new tags, maybe because you have a post and you added an author to that post, that is taken into account, and then the revalidation happens seamlessly. So it actually updates 2 caches. So when you press this button on the browser that is already here, it will update what's called the React server component payload. So it's shared. And if I disable JavaScript on this one and I change the title, I have it open in another tab. So this will also lead to the HTML markup being up to date. So if I refresh, you see the content is already there. So it works really, really well. And We also have a really there's a new API coming in next 15 that allows us to finally do this the way that we always wanted to do, which is to specify the tags after you run the fetch. By the way, this repo with all these examples will be shared, and the purpose of these examples is to show very low level how it works under the hood with the Sanity fetch function we give to you from Next Sanity. As well as the Sanity Live. So it's to give you like a way of understanding how to implement this and other frameworks on your own other than Next.js. But anyway, in the new Next 15 API, we get a function we can call when we use this new directive. And the coolest thing here is that without this directive, Next is really just caching the data fetches, but not the work that the server components do or the rendered output of server components. So on this demo, you can see that I'm tracking when the query was fetched, but the component that renders the layout is re-rendered even though only the text was changed. So you can see this was fetched 1 minute ago, but if either of these two components, the layout file or the page file is invalidated, only the cache for the data is persisted, but the server component will run again. But that's different in Next 15. So in Next 15, it handles the output of the component. So not only can we define the cache tag after we run the query, so there's only one query, and this query is only run when a tag is invalidated. So it's a very consistent one query per change tag that happens, and then it caches the output of that component. So if I change this title, you will see that it re-renders and now this counter will go down, but this will keep counting. We just changed the theme. I need to publish, of course. And there it goes, it's updated. And so that's a very exciting feature. And the whole goal of the define live utility is that we want to take care of all of these differences for Next.js, and we want to ship new utilities for other frameworks that are popular, like React Router, SvelteKit, TanStack Start is gaining a lot of traction, Astro, of course, Nuxt, all of these, because we don't want you to necessarily look into these implementation details unless you are using the Live Content API on something we haven't seen before. Maybe it's custom or something new. We want to build high-level utilities, like you see here in the README, where you only need to think about the data you fetch and set up the live function. And then we can take it further. And a lot further, then you can think more about how to deal with the layout shift. So in this demo here, because all of these demos, they don't really take care of the layout shift at all. But in this demo, it does. It implements a lot of patterns, and we're going to update this template and make it available once we're happy with all of the patterns. So in this one, if I go and publish that, I'm going to share the link in the chat as well, so you can actually see what happens when I publish. So I'm going to change the title. There's something new that is a bit more fresh. So I'm going to hit publish. And when I publish, it will change right away because it didn't cause any layout shift, right? So there was no need to show a prompt. I can keep adding stuff to the title. Publish that. I'll show you what it looks like in the editing UI. And we just transition very quickly between the two. That's one pattern you can use. So it's a lot about like nuance is important. If only my network was a little bit faster. Oh, corporate Wi-Fi. Let's publish that again. And now I'm going to publish a new post. And when I publish that, you'll see a toast show up that prompts me that there's new content. See this little toast here? New post is available. So when I click on this, using frame of motion, we animate that in. So if I unpublish this one, I'll show you that as well. So you can see the animation. Let's just unpublish it real quick. Now a new pop-up will show up that says more stories have been published. So the way you customize these messages and compare whether you removed, changed, or reordered things that's where you're going to have to spend your time to find the best patterns. In this app, we're just using a lot of frame of motion layout animations that makes it easy. For content like portable text, we're experimenting with CSS view transitions to animate changes there. So I'm gonna change this heading. So let's make that a bigger heading. It's a heading 2. I'm changing it to heading 1, publishing it. There will be a new toast about the article being changed. And before we press it, just to show it's an actual CSS view transition, I'm going to slow down the animation so you can see it. And I scroll down too far so you couldn't see it. Let's make it smaller again. And I'm going to show you this animation with lists because it's really sweet with lists. So you can see there's a little nice transition. And now if I just make a little list at the end, the bullet point list in portable text. Okay, hold your horses. This is really cool.
I'm holding horses, Cody.
Yeah,
This is super
all the
cool.
all the horses are being held.
So that's not a very interesting animation, right? But I'm going to change the indentation of it. And that's something that will be a nightmare to do in frame of motion. Hang on. Come up. And you see that? You see that? That's insane.
CSS is so cool.
It's all in CSS.
Yeah.
And you can also, of course, reorder and do all sorts of cool things. So this is the end user experience where we have prompts before we transition content. The other side of this, when you use Define Live, not only do we use the Live Content API to deal with things in production, we also integrate with features such as presentation tool, visual editing. Simeon showcased this at NextConf. You can scan this code right now. I'll share this link as well if you're not on a device with a camera. Okay, I'm going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3,
we are like
4, 5.
10 seconds ahead of the chat. So when we get these links, people are, oh, what is this link? And then it changes. But yeah.
Right. Okay. Where do you want to travel, Knut? Give me a destination.
I want to travel back to Oslo for holidays.
All right. So I'm gonna just start that up. And now if you go to presentation, that content will show up right away. We can go there, and it's now the AI assist is now filling this out. And as you can see, I don't need to press anything. It just loads in. And if you scan this link and open this page, that will also happen on your own device. If I had more time, I would show you this on my Apple Watch, but trust me, it actually works there as well. I don't know why you would do it, but you can.
But you can.
Yes, you can.
And I guess that's the most important part here. Like, there's a lot of things you now can, and we don't even know what you can do, kind of. And if you do something with like content API, do tell us. We are like super intrigued by this stuff.
Yes. And then almost done. Hang on.
One more thing.
Yeah. Because the last thing I wanted to show, this drop down here. Pedro will talk about this later, but we'll have support for more perspectives. And by using this high-level tooling like Define Live, all of these things, they just work. So we spent a lot of time the last couple of years to build really good low-level primitives. And now we're finally reaching the point where we can build really nice high-level primitives where you really can just focus on what should my schema look like, what should my content look like, and what do I want to fetch. And then we deal with the rest. We solve the hard problems. That's the kind of thing that maybe want to work at Sanity to begin with. This whole spirit around lets us deal with the hard problems so you can focus on the creative problems and actually build cool stuff.
And like
So, yeah.
that's thank you for like awesome demo and for being so like in the front of the stuff that happens in Next and now TanStack, another like promising framework that we can use. Apropos doing like the hard stuff, Cody, like can you like let us in a little bit like how do you actually make like developer experience that it's so low footprint and like it's almost just like a config? Like how do you go about that? It seems pretty hard.
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears and stubbornness. Just, it's like brute force development. You want it to be as simple as absolutely possible. And then when you find the simplest version of it that works, then you start to think about how can we scale that up? So, for example, with the solution I just showed you, there are a couple of downsides to it that we are well aware of. So, for example, in this application that does the very simple setup of firing a server function for every edit, the question is, what if I have 1,000 visitors and they all listen to this? And then there's just like, how does this scale up to maybe millions of users? So when you look at the traffic, for example, for certain types of applications, this amount of cache misses might be too high. So thinking about those things and then moving from there, and then we can think about, like in this case, what if we just use the Sanity Live API to notify you can re-render, but we set up a little bun instance that can fire a hidden API, like in this example here. Briefly mentioning it, but this repo will be shared so you can dive in and actually look at how it works. But here, it's a very simple bun application that calls the live API and then calls a hidden API function. And then on this instance, the only place that is allowed to call the revalidate tag function is this handler, which is protected by a secret. So the bun instance here just spins up and forwards these events so that browsers that visit your website will then just use these events to call the router refresh API. And what the router refresh API does with this setup, it only pulls down cached server components. So if you have 1,000 of visitors or 1,000,000, it's not going to lead to 1,000,000 requests to Conda Lake. It's just one request from Brazil to us, and then the cache is served to the rest the same way that HTML cache is served. So on a model like that, we get really high cache hits. And, well, not on my test right here, but the outgoing calls is extremely predictable. So this is directly correlates with how many mutations you have in your data set, not how many visitors you have on your application. So yeah, so the API hit rate is literally just how much content do you change and not how many times it's viewed.
Yeah, great that you took us through this, because I know that this has been like the question about live content API, like what is this going to do with like the usage and stuff. And this is like the low level reasons and how this works. One last question. Is there a way to disable the live push and just keep the automated revalidation that shows new content on page refresh? If you want kind of like the old world of actually having to refresh the page, kind of like, is this helpful for that, for like the cache validation story?
Is there a way to just get the cache validation? Yeah, that's the model I just showed. So with this model here, if you spin up your own server, it doesn't have to be bun, of course, but anything that runs for as long as you want can then forward these events and call your own API handler. So it's like very similar to running your own webhook machine. Because then I can actually even demonstrate it here, because if anyone presses this button, I'm just going to turn off JavaScript. Change it to 1, 2, 3. There's no observers. There's no server actions. It's only that bun service I have running, so you can see it. Actually, do I have it running? Yes, I do. So it's forwarded here. So when I refresh the page, this is kind of like the old world where it doesn't refresh in place. So to make this behave exactly like the old world, since we are running the live content API in the bun service, all you would have to do is just remove this code. You just don't render Sanity live and just have people refresh the page. So with this model, it can be a lot of work to refactor your application to deal with content that can change at any time. So you could start with just using it as a super webhook to just no longer deal with complicated validation strategies. And then later add this to then make your app feel more like a native app.
Yeah, and like as always, like this stuff you can like start using it iteratively. You can like start experimenting on one route. You don't have to do it all.
It doesn't have to be in layout file.
Yeah,
It could be on specific
live,
pages, right? where you like a new page, for example. You can add it there and experiment with something that is new and leave the brownfield stuff alone.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Cody, for this deep dive. Folks can go to our documentation and find live content API. We have starters, we have learn course on it, and so on, all the good stuff. And yeah, you showed us a little bit of the future. Very intrigued. Looking forward to seeing more. Thank you.
Thanks, Cody.
You're welcome.